Hi, I'm Kyle Cooper, president of the YWCA in Piqua. Women gained the right to vote through the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920. Alice Paul, one of the leaders in the fight, said, "I always feel this movement is sort of mosaic. Each of us puts one little stone, and then you get a great mosaic at the end." Throughout the history of our great republic, countless individuals have sacrificed their time, reputations, and even their lives to create this beautiful mosaic we call America. Here are some stories of local citizens who have demonstrated their commitment to positive change through voting.
I became a naturalized citizen in the spring of 1997. So it was actually not until a couple months later that I got to cast my first vote. But the feeling of going into the voting station and actually casting my ballot was the same feeling I had when I became a naturalized citizen and raised my right hand and pledged allegiance to the flag of the United States. I had all those same feelings because it was so important to me after living in the country and participating in government to actually have my vote cast for the person who I wanted to be in that position. So it was a really, really strong feeling of patriotism and happiness when I got to finally cast my vote for the very first time.
I would like to share my recollections of the first time that I realized how important voting was. I was in high school, and Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, was running for president. This was 1952, and he was on a tour through the Midwest on the train. And the high school band was asked to participate in the program. So at 4:30 in the morning, we all began to gather, and I'm seeing there's not very many people, wondering why was I up? And suddenly I realized that people were gathering. And the closer it got to the time the train was to arrive, more and more people came. And after he gave his talk and the train pulled away and I got back in the car, I couldn't wait to tell my dad how excited I thought everyone was, and that suddenly realized that those people would be voting for the President of the United States. And maybe the man that I just played my clarinet for was going to be the President, and he was. And so from that day, I think I could count on one hand the number of times I have missed voting. Voting is very important, just because I want my voice heard, whether the particular person or what I have voted for actually is what happens. It actually doesn't matter to me, the fact that I have voted. I've heard someone once say, it doesn't affect my little corner of the world, but it affects everyone's corner of the world.
So I teach 6th grade, and as a teacher, every day when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I always stress to my students who sometimes don't understand why we do the Pledge of Allegiance, that, there are people out there that gave everything for us to have the freedoms that we have today. And as an immigrant who never voted in her home country, some of those freedoms are treasured and privileges because I have seen others that haven't had those freedoms or privileges before, and I just want my kids to know that we're lucky. We're lucky that we can be home and we have the right to vote and we have the right to choose and select who has the same beliefs as us or who wants to guide us in the path that we believe is right. And not everybody gets a chance to do that, and sometimes my kids don't understand that, and they just need somebody to explain that to them, to show them that I've been there, I know what it is like, and if I didn't have this, then I don't know that this would be my home, and I want it to be my home. My family's here, and every day, every freedom that I enjoy and that I have is just something that I treasure like others can't. So that is why I believe everybody should really exercise the right to vote and go out there and firmly vote for what you believe and know that you're doing what others can't.
first time I voted, it was so significant because it was the first presidential election when 18-year-olds could vote, and it was during the Vietnam War. I'd been a teenager and knew all the arguments about 18-year-olds being drafted, dying in Vietnam, but not being able to vote. So in 1972, it was 1 year after the 26th Amendment was added to the Constitution, was the first presidential election, and I was in that group, 18 to 20-year-olds that could vote for the first time. I was out of state in college, so I had to vote absentee, which at that point was a bit of a process, but I was very determined and so excited to be able to vote. It was so meaningful. It was such a momentous time. There was so much going on in the country, but it was such a positive affirmation of our voice in a democracy. To this day, I think because of that beginning experience, I will never not vote. I could never not vote. It's so many things. It's being a part of an effort, whether it's successful or not, but being part of an effort to try and improve things and make life better for people. I just love going in to vote. I always vote on election day. Never vote early because I like that feeling of going in to vote. I think there's always a smile on my face when I'm walking out. And now as an adult, I have learned so much more. My father's law partner was William McCulloch, and he had such an instrumental role to play in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then following in the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to provide rights for African Americans, and that whole struggle that went forward. And then a few years ago, I realized that my grandmother, who I knew as a child, was born in 1885, and so was 35 years old when women got the right to vote, and it just struck me that it hasn't been that long, and that the struggle for women's right to vote was just a generation away from me. So I'm excited to vote. I taught government and used to register my students to vote, and it's actually one of the proudest things I did as a teacher was to take those voter registration forms down to the Board of Elections and turn them in and know that my students had voluntarily filled them out and were then going to be a new generation that was excited to vote as well.
As I was growing up in Piqua, my parents were not actively voting, and one thing that I found that as we got older, we just felt the importance of voting. Your vote just does matter, and one thing that we did for my father, he is now 84 years old, and every election we would get him an absentee ballot because not only did our vote matter, so did his. So he, every election, has been so excited to cast his vote because us as U.S. citizens, it is important. It does give you a sense of society, the importance of citizenship and what is done locally in your area, not just the schools, but the government. And the thing that I feel is important, you being a voter, like I said earlier, your vote does matter. One person's vote makes a difference, and yours could be the vote. One other thing that really got me excited through this time period, watching my children as they got older and were able to go vote, to look out and see not only just my husband and I voting, to look and see both of my children coming in to vote also. So you not only make a difference for your generation, but generations to follow. So make sure you cast your vote.
The fight for the right to vote has tried to ensure that discrimination in voting shall not be tolerated on the basis of sex, color, age, religion, or disability, and continues to this day. Please join us in reaffirming your belief in the power of individual to change things for the better. Just remember, it's your vote, your right, your future.